Shalom, all praise unto Yahweh, Shem Shai, double honors the apostles of GMS. Now, this is gonna be a quick video, um, speaking on the markets and at the Agora, okay, the so-called banking world. And I was speaking to some brothers a little bit earlier on, as pertaining to the topic that you have in front of you. Now, if the Most High wills it, I will do a sort of a finance special based on this documentary that I'd watched over the weekend, which is a good documentary to watch, and it's called Boom Bust Boom, and that's out there on Netflix. And you can watch that. It's a very good documentary, very good documentary. But you know, Yahweh Shem Shai, I'll do a special for that on in a couple of nights' time. But with this article in mind, okay, I'm gonna read a few pointers, you know, and allude to the points that I think is pertaining to. Obviously, you know, more astute brothers out there is gonna be able to bring out more meat out of this than I could ever dream of doing. But you know, I'm here now. So without much further ado, it says NatWest paves way for introduction of negative interest rates. So it says bank warns business customers that it may change. It may charge rather more to accept deposits, but says it has no plans to do so for personal accounts. So what you have is a situation is out there in especially in England at the minute, and they're gonna mention this when I read a little bit more. Okay, but you know, you might see the statement and you say, okay, also I, you know, they charge me £1 when I deposit £1,000 or whatever, and so on and so forth. But what you really need to understand is how the state of the markets is right now, and what you've got is such a fragile stock market, and I do mean very fragile. Okay, it's a very fragile stock market at the minute, and you got it to where the Bank of England, which is the central bank out here in England, all right, the Bank of England are reluctant to raise and they're going to tell you that it's a historically low interest rates are currently at about 0.5%, and that's the interest rates that they charge to the bank, you know, the high street banks like your NatWest and so on and so forth, for the interest that they take on loans, because this is all just a game of loans, a game of IOUs. And like I mentioned, that documentary I had watched, which, you know, Yahweh Shem Shai, I'll do a special on. Okay, they go into that, man. They go into the fact that, you know, your everyday consumer, they go into a bank and ask for a loan, and the bank, for all intents and purposes, get that money. They get that money from the central banks, man. Okay, but it's not money as in to say they actually put money in there. They put IOUs in there, and that's where your currency comes into it. And you see how that all that debt flows. That's the word. That's where the term currency comes from. Okay, you're getting a flow of debt, a flow of negatives. Okay, but you know, with that, you know, aside, what's happening is with this fragile market you've got out here. Okay, the central banks, you know, in England and many other central banks are reluctant to raise their so-called interest rates, because if they do, and they just speaking about raising them interest rates, you know, you had what was it, Black Friday or something like that. You had stock market crashes. Now it's not a crash. It's not to be confused with a what's the term I'm looking for? Because you got a crash, but a crash is, the system crashes, but yeah, you know, they restart it, and it damn near gets to the point, or even exceeds the point that it has been before. Now there's major examples of that, and now, you know, I may go into those examples on my on the quote unquote special that I'll do on Boom Bust Boom. But crashes generally are part of the system. You know, the system is designed to crash, but it has a finite end. Because what? Because all of this currency that you got is built up of negatives, and you know, there comes a point where you're gonna have to default because it's unpractical, or impossible rather more, okay, to pay off the debt on the principal, because the interest rates that you've one, the interest rates has gone up, and two, you borrowed so much money, like you ain't gonna be able to pay it off. A good example that comes to mind is the 18 trillion, of which you're gonna have a good percentage of that coming as interest rates of what they borrowed from their central banks, You know, that 18 trillion is like, manyfold the GDP of the United States. And when they do the mathematics, basically, all it what it comes down to is all the income that everybody in America, makes. If it went to paying that off, one, it'll take years to do so, but two, okay, you ain't gonna be eating no food, you ain't gonna be having no houses. So in other words, it's impossible to pay that money off, man. So what you have to do is default, and that's the time we're coming into. Okay, we're coming into that stage where you're gonna have to default the currencies. Okay, because all of these major currencies have borrowed so much that now we're getting to that point where it's like, hold on a minute, we're talking trillions and trillions of dollars, of pounds, of yens, of rubles, of debt, okay, that we're not going to be able to pay off. We need a new system, okay, that's going to allow us to function as we've normally done, but with the debt side. Okay, so I'm gonna carry on reading a little bit. Sorry if I've missed a few points. It says a major high street bank has paved the way for the introduction of negative interest rates, right, for the first time in Britain, by warning customers it may charge to accept deposits. Okay, so if now remember, I put this. So excuse me. Okay, so we're back again. So if I remember how I explained it a little bit earlier on, okay, the banks are basically the ones that are feeling the greatest of the pinch, man. All right, they basically need those funding coming from one way or another, whether that being that the central banks go to a negative interest rates, right? And so that the interest that the local banks have borrowed from the central banks, okay, is actually depleted, okay, or they're gonna have to go on interest rates on their deposits. Okay, now it seems complicated at first, but really you just need to understand the difference between debts and deposits. Okay, debt is actually negative. Okay, but they say, they call it credit in this society, which goes to show you how this society is ass backwards, right? But what the bank owns to the central bank is debt. Okay, so if they've taken out £1,000, all right, which is also more like millions and millions of pounds from the central bank, okay, and they have a principal that they have to pay, which is their £1,000 plus the interest, okay, they have to pay a sum total that is greater than the principal. All right, now when you have negative interests, it goes backwards. Okay, so you pay less than what you had on the principal. In other words, the central bank, okay, which is owned by the elite banking family, is actually paying to the local bank. All right, pay that debt off. Okay, so because they're feeling the pinch, and that's what they're going to be talking about a little bit later on in this bit. But you also got deposits. Okay, so a person comes into a bank, a local bank we're talking about here, all right, and deposits £1,000. They're saying we want to take a little bit off that for ourselves. Okay, so either way you really gotta get your head. It's hard to get your head around, but once you get your head around it, you see that the people that are feeling the greatest pinch is these local banks, and they're really trying to put some strategies in there so that they can make more money, so that they can have more financial flexibility. Because the central banks are the ones always writing the checks. You take the Federal Reserve, for instance, they write checks to the local banks on a bank balance of nothing. They make money out of thin air. Okay, so the central banks, they don't really necessarily have to have cash flow per se, but the cash flow that is created at the local banks. If you go how to money is inception, there's a good video on it, and they got cartoons in there and the 300s, but it's a really good video, and they go into how the money is made at the local banks, because that's where the currency really comes into in and of its own. All right, so it says the warning that by NatWest was made in a letter changing the terms and conditions for the bank's 850 business customers, which range from self-employed traders to charities to clubs to big corporations. right? It could mean that an account holder with £1,000 in NatWest could see that shrink to 999 or less following a year, as the bank charges negative interest. So they're charging you to hold your money, or in other words, somehow they're gonna get that money. Either the loan that the local bank NatWest has borrowed from the Bank of England regresses, right, by way of the negative interest that they're thinking of doing by way of the central banks, or they're gonna impose their own negative interest and get that from the consumer. Either way, you're fucked. Okay, because that's going to mean talking about negative interest rates. What happened to the good old times where you could put £1,000 and you leave it there, and then after a while, it will be a sizable amount. Okay, that's no more, man. All right, they're talking about times where the bank, the local bank is suffering, man. All right, it says and just to pause there and calls to remember some examples before the 2008 market crash. You had the Lehman Brothers. That was basically a high street bank. Okay, and they would have probably put some kind of austerity measures like you're seeing over there. But guess what? That's the customers are not gonna like that. Okay, they're gonna think, look, you can't put our money in there. We're gonna go elsewhere. Okay, so you're gonna have that beginning of that cycle of that, what is a depression, man. All right, I believe the term is depression, man. Prices going up, people losing jobs, and so on and so forth. And people lose jobs, so more people lose jobs, so no one else is spending. It's gonna get crazy out here. See, this is and I like numbers because numbers are finite, man. Okay, numbers are finite. Okay, I like numbers. I wish I was a bit better at math, but god damn it, numbers are pure. Okay. Now you can stand there and argue this, that, and the third, but you can't argue your way out of this one, man. Your kingdom is finished, man. Okay, and you're seeing the cracks, in the ice, because the ice you're skating on thin ice, man. Now you're seeing the cracks beginning to fall. Really been seeing these cracks for a long time, man. All right. It says in letters to the customers, the NatWest said global interest rates remain very low. Okay, now this is talking about the central bankers, and in some markets are currently negative. All right, depending on the future market condition, this could result in unchanged in us charging interest on credit balances. And says the taxpayer-owned bank, whose parent is the Royal Bank of Scotland (RBS), said it has no plans to make changes to the terms and conditions of personal account holders to allow to charge negative interest rates. It says interest rates on the government and corporation bonds fell steeply in the political turmoil that followed the Brexit. The Bank of England is now under intense pressure to cut its already historically low base rate from 0.5, right, to kickstart the economy, although a move into negative territory is not likely in the short term. Okay, so they're going to cut that 0.5 even further, but they're saying they might even have to go into that. In the short term, that's not practical, but they're already considering it, and they're showing you that's already been played out in many other economic structures out there. So I mean, hopefully I did that some justice. Like I said, these more astute, financially astute brothers out there that could probably get into that and and really shed some light on some juicy bits in them. Hopefully I haven't gone off and said some craziness that's not valid or anything like that. And if I am correct, which when with numbers I tend to be more so than incorrect, then hey man, you're seeing the beginning the beginning of your ending, man. Okay, and really, it's not really even the beginning of your ending. We've had the beginning of your ending. This is the meat. We've had the potatoes, which was the earthquakes, which was the uprisings, in terms of these different nations coming up against each other. We got Russia out there with America, basically with America at their front door. So we've had the meat. We've had the potatoes, so to speak. But now it's time for the meat, man. Okay. We're already at war with Russia. We're already seeing economic turmoil all over the place. Now it's just time for that main piece of meat, that big piece of chicken. Okay. Alright, so with that, I'm going to say, all praise unto Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. Double honors the apostle GMS. Shalom, brother, more to you brothers that be pushing this truth and sincerity.